There is a law you have never heard of. It doesn't appear in the news, no one teaches it in school. And most of the engineers who rely on it every day wouldn't even be able to explain it properly if you asked. But she is there, right now, governing every text message you send, every video you watch, every call you make, every bank transaction, every GPS signal, every byte that travels across the internet. She doesn't ask permission. Don't negotiate. It makes no exceptions. She simply commands. And if you try to disobey her, she doesn't punish you. It simply makes what you are trying to do impossible. I discovered this law in 1948. I was sitting in Bell Labs with pen and paper, trying to answer a question that seemed impossible. The question was this: is there a limit to how much information can be sent over a communication channel? And if there is, what happens when you try to cross that limit? The answer I found changed everything. But before I get to it, I need to explain to you why the question was so difficult. In the 1940s, communication was a business of trial and error. Engineers built systems, tested, improved, tested again. They wanted to send more data over a copper wire. They wanted phone calls to be clearer. They wanted telegraphs to transmit faster. Each improvement was achieved little by little, with a lot of sweat and a lot of money. But no one knew where the ceiling was. No one knew whether the current system operated at 10% of maximum capacity or at 90%. There was no map. There was no reference. It was like running a marathon without knowing where the finish line was. You run, you improve your time, but you never know how close you are to your best possible. And that was the real problem. It wasn't that the systems were bad. They worked, but without knowing the theoretical limit, every engineering decision was a guess. Is investing millions in a better cable worth it? It depends. If the current cable is already close to the limit, it is not valid. If it's far away, it's worth a lot. But how do you know? It was impossible, until I found the law. The law begins with a simple, almost obvious observation. Every communication channel has noise, always, no exception. When you talk on the phone, there is static. When transmitting data over a cable, there is electromagnetic interference. When you send signals by radio, there is thermal noise, atmospheric noise, noise from other signals. Noise is inevitable. It is a property of the physical universe. The electrons in the wires move around because of the heat. Air molecules vibrate. Electromagnetic waves from 1,000 different sources overlap. You can't eliminate the noise. You can reduce it, you can shield your cables, you can cool your circuits, but it will never reach zero. The noise is always there. It's like dust. You clean, and the next day, there's more. It is a property of the world. It is not a defect. It's a feature. And the noise does something terrible. It corrupts information. When a signal travels from one point to another, noise mixes with it. What arrives on the other side is no longer the pure original signal. It is the original signal plus the noise. And the receiver has to look at that mix and try to figure out what the original signal was. Sometimes it succeeds, sometimes not. When it fails, there is an error. One bit changed, a distorted word, one wrong pixel, a strange sound on the call. It's like trying to hear someone whispering at a rock concert. The whisper is the signal. The show is the noise. And you need to separate one from the other. Before me, conventional wisdom said this: if noise is inevitable, then mistakes are inevitable. The faster you try to stream, the more errors appear. The only way to reduce errors is to transmit more slowly, repeat messages, use stronger signals, and even then, you never eliminate errors completely. It just reduces them. That was the belief. It seemed reasonable. It even seemed obvious, and I was wrong. What I discovered was exactly the opposite. I have proven, mathematically, that it is possible to transmit information over a noisy channel with an error rate as close to zero as you want. Not almost zero. Arbitrarily close to zero. As small as you have the patience to specify. One error for every 1,000 messages, one in every million, one in every trillion. The more sophisticated the code, the lower the error rate. And this does not require infinitely strong signals, nor perfect channels, nor infinite repetitions. It requires only one thing, that the transmission rate is below a certain number, a specific calculable number that depends on the physical properties of the channel. This number is the channel capacity. That's the law, the invisible law that governs every message, every code, and every network. She says two things. First, below the channel capacity, it is possible to communicate without errors. Second, beyond the channel capacity, errors are inevitable no matter what you do. Two statements, simple to state, devastating in their consequences. Let me explain why this is so surprising. Imagine a water pipe. It has a diameter. There is a maximum flow rate of water that can pass through it. If you try to force more water than the pipe can hold, it will overflow. This is intuitive. It makes sense. Now imagine that I tell you, if you run the water below the maximum flow rate, it will arrive at the other side perfectly clean, without any dirt, no matter how dirty the pipe is. This is not intuitive. A dirty pipe should dirty the water, right? Less water should mean less mess, not zero mess. But that's exactly what my law says about information. Below capacity, you can have perfect transmission. Not nearly perfect. Perfect? How is this possible? The answer lies in coding. Not the kind of coding that engineers did before, based on intuition and experience, but in a structured mathematical coding, precisely designed to combat channel-specific noise. The idea is this. Before sending the message through the channel, you add extra information, redundancy, additional bits that do not carry new information but protect existing information. It's like sending an army with shields. Shields do not attack, they only protect, but without them soldiers die. The natural redundancy of human language does something similar, but in a crude and inefficient way. When I say I'm going to the market, you understand I'm going to the market even with the missing letter, because the language has enough redundancy for you to reconstruct the word. But this redundancy was not designed. It simply evolved. It works for everyday conversations, but it's terrible for technical communication, because it protects against the wrong noise and wastes protection where it's not needed. What I showed is that there are mathematical codes that add the right redundancy, in the right amount, in the right place, codes that protect against exactly the types of errors that the channel introduces, and that with these codes you can get arbitrarily close to perfect transmission. Each bit of redundancy is a strategically placed shield. No waste, maximum protection. Efficiency tends toward ideal as the code becomes more sophisticated, but I need to be honest. In 1948, I proved that these codes exist. I proved mathematically that perfect transmission is possible under capacity. But I didn't build those codes. I didn't give the recipe. I said, the solution exists. It is mathematically guaranteed. But finding it is your problem. This left many engineers frustrated. They wanted something they could build tomorrow. And I gave them a theorem. But the theorem was more valuable than any circuit, because he told everyone with absolute certainty that the search was worth it, that the goal was achievable, that they weren't chasing a mirage. Imagine how powerful that is. Know that the treasure exists before you start digging. Know that a cure is possible before starting the research. This certainty changes everything. It changes the disposition, the investment, the courage to continue when results take time. And the search lasted decades. Richard Hamming, my colleague at Bell Labs, created the first practical error-correcting codes in 1950. They were elegant, they worked, but they were far from the theoretical limit. In the 1960s, Reed-Solomon codes came, more powerful, capable of correcting bursts of errors. They are what protect your CDs and DVDs against scratches. When you pick up a scratched CD and it still plays perfectly, thank the Reed-Solomon codes. They are there, invisible, correcting hundreds of errors per second without you noticing. In the 1970s and 1980s, code theory advanced, but the limit remained distant. Engineers got closer, but there was always a gap between what they achieved and what theory said was possible. Then, in 1993, something extraordinary happened. Two French researchers, Claude Shannon and Alain Glavio, presented turbo codes. These codes operated at fractions of decibels of the channel's theoretical capacity. They practically touched the limit. 45 years after my article, engineering has finally caught up with what mathematics already knew. The law I had discovered was not just a theoretical curiosity. It was a real, attainable, practical goal. And when it hit, it changed telecommunications forever. Today, variations of these codes are everywhere. On your cell phone, LDPC codes and polar codes protect your data from wireless channel noise. In your internet connection, corrector codes ensure that data packets arrive intact. In communications with space probes, where the signal travels billions of kilometers and arrives very weakly, sophisticated codes extract information from signals that, to the naked eye, would be indistinguishable from pure noise. The Voyager probe, more than 24 billion kilometers from Earth, is still able to send data because its communications systems operate close to Earth, the theoretical capacity of the channel. Every bit that comes from there is a testimony to the law. Every image Voyager sends back is proof that the law works even in the most extreme conditions humanity has ever faced. But the law doesn't just govern transmission. It governs everything that involves information. Let me show you how it branches out. When you compress a file, the law is there. There is a minimum limit on the size of the compressed file, determined by the entropy of the source. If the original file has a lot of redundancy, it can be compressed a lot. If you have little, you can't. This limit is as absolute as the channel capacity. You can't compress below entropy without losing information. Every compression algorithm, zip, gzip, JPEG, MP3, H.264, they are all playing the same game, trying to get closer to the theoretical limit that entropy defines. And none of them, no matter how sophisticated, can surpass it. It's like an invisible wall. You can touch it, but never cross it. When you encrypt a message, the law is there. The security of a cryptographic system ultimately depends on how much information the attacker can extract. If the system is well designed, the amount of information leaked is essentially zero, measured in bits. The law defines what is possible to hide and what will inevitably be revealed, given enough computing power. All modern cryptography is, in some sense, an application of information theory. Each password, each key, each security protocol operates within the limits that the law defines. When a computer network routes data packets, the law is present. Each link in the network has a capacity in bits per second. Total traffic cannot exceed the sum of the link capacities. Congestion happens when demand exceeds capacity, and optimizing routing is, in essence, a problem of allocating bits in the most efficient way possible, respecting the limits of each channel. The entire Internet is a gigantic network of channels, each governed by the same law that I formulated with a single copper wire in mind. When an engineer designs a storage system, the law is present. Each hard drive, each flash memory, each cloud server has a capacity measured in bits. Storage reliability depends on error-correcting codes that protect data from physical failure. Hard drives fail, sectors become corrupt, flash memory cells degrade over time. And data survives because there is mathematical redundancy protecting each bit. The same laws that govern transmission govern storage because storing information is essentially transmitting it into the future. The channel is time, noise is physical degradation, and the capacity is determined by the same equations. Do you notice the pattern? The law is not about phones, it's not about telegraphs, it's not about a specific type of technology, it is about the nature of information. And information is everywhere. Every system that processes, transmits, stores, or manipulates information is subject to this law, no exception. And that leads me to something I find profoundly beautiful. Universality. The law that I discovered by studying copper wires applies equally to optical fibers, to radio channels, to quantum communications, to neuronal synapses, to DNA sequences, any system where information moves from one point to another. The law doesn't care about technology, she cares about information, and the information is the same no matter the medium that carries it. Just like gravity doesn't care whether the falling object is a feather or an anvil. The law of information does not care whether the channel is a copper wire or a beam of light. The same equations apply. The same limits apply. This is rare in science. Truly universal laws. Newton's gravity is one. Thermodynamics is another. Einstein's theory of relativity. And I believe with conviction that information theory is in that same group. Not because I invented it, but because mathematics shows that it describes something fundamental about how the universe works. Information is as real as matter and energy, and it has its own laws, as inviolable as the laws of physics. Now there is something I need to clarify, because it creates confusion. The law does not say how to build the best system. It tells you what the best possible performance is. There is a huge difference. It's like knowing that the speed of light is the maximum speed limit in the universe. This knowledge doesn't tell you how to build a ship that travels at 99% the speed of light. But it tells you that any ship you build, no matter how advanced, will never surpass that limit. And it tells you that if your current ship travels at 1% the speed of light, there is a lot of room for improvement. Channel capacity works the same way. She tells you the ceiling. It doesn't tell you how to achieve it. But knowing the ceiling completely changes the way you work. Thus that now each engineer knows exactly how much room they have to improve. Know if it's worth investing in better code or a better channel. Know whether the current system is efficient or wasteful. The ceiling is precious information, perhaps the most precious information an engineer can have, and the formula for calculating this ceiling is surprisingly simple. For a channel with a certain bandwidth W and a signal-to-noise ratio, Sn, the capacity C is equal to W times the logarithm of 1 plus Sn. That's all. A single equation, 3 variables. And the entire universe of modern telecommunications derives from it. Every cell phone, every tower, every satellite, every fiber optic cable, every Wi-Fi router, they are all designed to operate as close as possible to the number this equation produces. It's strange when you stop to think about it, that such a small equation governs so much, that a formula that fits on one line has more power over your daily life than almost any law created by governments or parliaments. You cannot violate this law. No judge applies it, no police supervise it. But it applies itself, automatically, relentlessly. If you try to send data beyond the channel capacity, errors appear. Not as punishment, as a physical consequence. As inevitable as gravity pulling a rock down. Some people, when I explain this, say, but technology advances. The channels get better, bandwidths increase, the signal-to-noise ratio improves. So capacity grows, right? Yes, absolutely. The capacity of a channel can grow with technological improvements, but the law remains, the limit remains. Each new channel has a new capacity, larger perhaps, but still finite. And beyond this new capacity, errors remain inevitable. Technology changes the numbers, but the law that governs numbers is immutable. You can build a bigger pipe, but the pipe still has a diameter. You can build a wider road, but the road still has a vehicle limit. The limit changes size, but it never ceases to exist. This is what it means to be a fundamental law. It does not depend on current technology. It doesn't depend on what we invent tomorrow. It describes a relationship between information, noise, and capacity that is true regardless of the physical substrate. Be it electrons in copper wires, photons in optical fibers, radio waves in the air, or qubits in a quantum computer. The law applies, always. And perhaps most impressively, this law, discovered by thinking about mundane telephone engineering problems, ended up revealing something about the structure of the universe itself. Physicists such as Jacob Bekenstein and Stephen Hawking have shown that there is an upper limit to how much information can exist in a region of space. This limit, measured in bits, is proportional to surface area, not volume. This suggests that information is as fundamental as space and time. But the laws of information are not just laws of engineering, they are laws of nature. The law I found by studying telephone wires appears again at the edge of black holes. This is no coincidence, it's universality. I started with copper wires and ended with the structure of the cosmos, not because I planned it, but because the law I found is deeper than I imagined. It doesn't just govern phones and computers. It governs any process where information is created, destroyed, captured, transformed, transmitted, or stored. And as information permeates everything, from subatomic particles to galaxies, law permeates everything as well. When you send a message now, and it arrives perfectly on the other side of the world in millisecond, it's not magic. It's the law working. When you make a video call and the image is clear despite the signal traveling through channels full of interference, the law is being respected. When a probe in deep space sends back a photo of Pluto and the image arrives crystal clear after traveling billions of kilometers, it is the law being obeyed. Every bit protected, every error corrected, every successful transmission is a silent demonstration of the law. She never appears in the credits, never receives applause. Most people live their entire lives without knowing it exists, but she is there, in every message, in each code, on each network, invisible, silent, absolute. This law rules, and nothing in the universe can change it.